It really looks like the ANC is hellbent on shutting down Morning Shot. Well, not in particular, but they really don't like what we do. And with me to discuss this is, of course, my partner in crime, Byron, all the way from, I don't know, some place that doesn't have any water at the moment.
So this is obviously in relation to the Film and Publication Board, which has now issued a brand new notice, which basically mandates all ISPs to have effectively regulation over the content that they are delivering to the public. Now, obviously, a content distributor would be someone like us. It doesn't actually dictate what platforms and what is classed as any form of online content. And it says that basically they are now the sole arbitrators of the content that can be distributed. Now, they obviously have some caveats according to the existing laws. And it basically says that if you wish to distribute content online, you basically have to register with the FPB, the Film Publications Board, who were in the past just a categorization board. They tell you if a film was rated 15 or 13 or PG, and now obviously they're the full-fledged regulators.
Well, the sinister side is what is a content creator, because it's so broad in the act that it could be literally anything from a TikTok to a Twitter video to a YouTube video to a photo that you take. Like, for example, a distributor basically means anyone who has a film, a game, or published content. I mean, and that's literally anyone. Like from your grandparents on Boomer Book to some weird influencer on TikTok. All of that stuff can be now classified by the Film and Publication Board, and accordingly, this is immense power in the hands of ANC cadres. Like, that's the real problem here.
Their responses were, well, this is all done for, good public reasons. And in typical fashion, this is what the left always does. They give you some things that you can't really dispute, and then they put some really vague characteristics in there that should cause you concern. So they mentioned that one of the things that they wanted to get rid of would be child abuse. No one can argue with that. But then they go on to incite this a little bit further. So they say that the next thing that they're trying to stop is the proliferation of propaganda for war. Well, technically, if we say Ukraine or Russia is right, is that proliferation of propaganda for war? Incitement of imminent violence. Well, if we go on there and basically say that Juju's going to burn down KZN, which happened in the July peaceful process. That's code, by the way, because we obviously can't use certain phrases on YouTube. Is that a breach of the act? Well, we don't know. But here's where it gets really insidious. They say advocating hatred based on identifiable group characteristics. So if we're against things like communists or socialists, that's a group characteristic. How about if we are critical of the transgender movement? That's a characteristic. What about if we say take a critical view and we say, Christianity is the only way and, Islam is fake? We're not saying that, by the way, but is that an attack on an identified group of characteristics? So now you can see how every time we might say something which goes against a, say, government-approved narrative, we could effectively be in breach of the narrative of the act, which is exactly what will end up happening.
I think maybe if let's play a bit of 4D chess here. What happens if this bill was made only for Julius Malema to go to prison? Now this is all we all laugh. Ha ha ha. He will never go to prison. So a lot of people might be thinking, this bill's great because Julius does do like inflammatory racist stuff all the time. My friends, laws like this do not apply. It's not hypocrisy, it is hierarchy. This is to dumb down the average person. This is to dumb down the AfriForums of the world, the Sarkalichas of the world, the Morning Shots of the world, and anyone else who is against the current regime. And if you have a society of snitches, right? Oh, he said this bad thing and we should report him because we have the authority under the bill. You basically create a society that's like the divide and conquer strategy 101. And at the end of the day, the ANC will win over and over again because everyone else is just a snitch.
Now, you might say, oh, but that would never happen. Well, actually, it has happened. So we're finding this more and more and more even in the UK. Now, these laws already exist with Ofcom. And what we are seeing in the UK is that certain individuals may get reported to Ofcom for, say, circulating a mean tweet. And what does Ofcom do? Ofcom obviously sends that to the police, whether it be the Met or whoever. And the police knock at your door and basically say, you issued a mean tweet, and as a result, we're giving you a public order offense, and you need to remove it because you're being inflammatory. And you might go, oh, but Jeez, that seems really extreme, except it's happening right now. It is happening in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Now, the saving grace in South Africa is police ain't going to turn up at your door here, probably because A, they don't know where you live, and B, they're freaking useless. I mean, they'd have to find a van that actually works. But the reality is, what this will probably serve to deepen is where you say something that they don't like, they will use these laws to stop you. And you might say, okay, well, give us an example. I'm going to give you an example. And that is RT, Russian news. RT in the UK was shut down. You cannot access RT in the UK because it is deemed to be propaganda of war. It's a Russian state sponsored news thing. And so you can't get the alternative to the Russian Ukrainian conflict because it's deemed to be a propaganda of war outlet. Who did that? Ofcom did. Ofcom did it at the start of the conflict. So you can now see, let's imagine that Ramon and I was like, oh, no, we need to get rid of the ANC. They're really bad for the country. What happens if they take us as propagandists for the incitement of violence or hatred on the individual of a group? Well, look and behold, Morning Shot gets shut down. Ramon and I get sent to prison. This is the consequences of what could happen. It may seem far-fetched, but it ain't that far-fetched, is it, Ramon?
No, it's not. It's happening all over the Western world, the free and liberal Western world. But on the other hand, Byron, we could just become like Count Dankula. For those who don't know, Count Dankula is a Scottish chav, for lack of a better word. I actually do like him, don't get me wrong. But he taught his pug to do like a Nazi salute, which is hilarious. And he got fined and taken to prison for hate speech. And now he's got like millions of subscribers on YouTube. So maybe it's not a bad thing, Byron. Maybe we should intentionally get arrested. We'll make millions.
But I'm really glad that you used the example of Count Dankula because he is actually a really good example of where this goes. He issued a meme. A Karen from the Highlands of Scotland somewhere reported him. And as a result, he had the police turn up at his door. And when he was like, I haven't done anything wrong. There's no real law against this. And technically, there isn't. There is no real law that says that he can't do what he did. In South Africa, there's no law either. But because it was in breach of like Ofcom type regulations, lo and behold, he obviously got an action for it. He got a public order offense, which is obviously where this can all go. And that public order offense he challenged, and he ended up getting a fine because they deemed it to then be a degree of hateful speech and hurting someone or other. And this is where the possibility of how draconian these regulations can becomes apparent. So you shouldn't take these as like, oh, this is just, it's nothing. This is globalist type regulation that every country in the world is now seeing. And we did a video on this on our international channel where you've got the globalists all sitting there going, we on the truth and we have the tools. And they sitting there in board meetings elsewhere, and they formulating these rules that have massive impacts on you and me in terms of our freedom of speech, and also being able to hold our own government to account, which I think South Africa knows exactly what happens when we fail to hold our government account.
So, Byron, I tend to agree with you. And we are not Europe, so the possibilities of us getting a public order fine and going to prison are very low. But because it's not Europe, there's no consistency, right? There's no like due process. Not that there is much in Europe either. So here they can really just SWAT team your house because you said a mean thing on Twitter, or you made a meme of Julius Malema dressed like a cockroach or something like that, because that's, of course, hate speech for everyone except for him. So we'll see where this goes. Obviously, giving the ANC more power at a time like now is never a good idea. And the ISPs are so spineless and corporate and licensed and all the rest of it that they will just fold over, like Discam and everyone else that we have spoken about on the channel. So I'm interested to know, you, the viewer, what can the ANC actually do with all this? And are we, as Morning Shot, under threat?